Fiancé blames me for his life choices, then breaks up. Am I the asshole for being disgusted and just saying okay? Original post. So, IDK man. I, 28, have been with my fiancé, Alex 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, and have been together ever since. He finished his doctorate in economics just last year. Since then he has been working at the university. I have my master's in media sciences and decided to start working instead of going for a PhD. Okay, so the problem is that Alex broke up with me last Monday. It was literally so surreal and honestly, just weird. For the past few months, he'd been acting strange. He was making demands and then dropping them immediately. A few examples. He told me we were going to paint our walls back from dark green to white. When I asked why, he just said, "For fuck's sake, forget it," and never brought it up again, even when I asked. Another time, he came home and got mad because I was sitting on the couch with my head covered in a blanket. I had cramps. He was upset because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. Mind you, the house was spotless. When I tried to talk about it, he said, "Forget it, it's not a big deal." This kind of thing became common. Every time I tried to communicate, tried to figure out what was going on, whether it was something I did or maybe he was just stressed at work, he would just say everything was fine, but he was clearly seething with rage. I didn't even have to do anything. He would find something to complain about: the apartment, clothes, me, work, etc. So I gave him space, which apparently was also wrong. I told him I was going to help my parents with repairs for a few days, and somehow that was also wrong because he wanted to renovate the apartment too. Then, on Monday, I got a text saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming, and after the last few months, I had made peace with it. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch. He didn't even wait for me to take off my jacket before saying, "I want to break up." Then the verbal diarrhea started. He told me he resented me. First, because I didn't pursue my academic career further, even though I was capable, and he didn't want to upset me at the time. Then, when I started making more money, since he didn't make much as a PhD student, he felt like I should have the last word financially, and he hated it. Mind you, I never said anything like, "It's my money, so I have the final say." That's a rule he imposed on himself, and he hated it. He said he hated our paint scheme, the couch, and even our fucking crockpot. Then, he told me he had rejected a better PhD program to stay here because I had already started my job by the time he got the acceptance letters. Only, he never told me he had even applied overseas. He said a few months ago he checked in with a friend who's in that program, saw how they were thriving, and decided I ruined his life. He said I had too much control over his life and that he hated the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and fuck him over. I honestly don't even know what that means. He also said he hated that all his friends loved me and didn't let him vent about me. Then he said again, "I'm done." I was floored. I had already made peace with the idea that we were ending, and it hurt, but after that rant, I was just disgusted. I looked at him, probably with a disgusted expression, and said, "Okay?" He lost it. He said this is exactly what he meant, that it was horrible. We had been together for 4 years, and all I had to say was okay to our breakup. I just asked if he wanted to stay here while he figured out where to go. He said, "Typical, of course you're holding the apartment over me," and started ranting again, so I just left. I told my parents, and they're also confused. My dad suggested I reach out to our landlord and explain the situation to see what options I have. I can keep paying the rent no problem myself. He covered the utilities and some subscriptions. Just to reiterate, I never had a problem with this. I saw that he was chasing his dream, and that was more important to me than a 50-50 financial split. I make good money and am happy at my job. I never saw it as slaving away. I always had the mentality that my money was our money because we were building a life together. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, but I honestly never cared. As long as I felt he was working towards something and wasn't taking advantage of me, I was fine with it. More than fine. Alex is still mad. He's going between texting me like a robot about the logistics of the split to being a seething asshole complaining about everything. I'm not even hurt anymore. I just feel nauseated by him at this point. I don't know. Should I have reacted differently? Edit. Thank you for all your opinions. It was nice to get this off my chest, lol. Just to clarify, that I don't feel like a victim. I feel like something happened, and my relationship just turned bad. He behaved like an asshole, but that is the extent of it. Very clearly, something is going on. But he doesn't want me to be part of whatever it is, and I have to respect that. Now I just have to detangle myself legally from him, and after that, I'll just be left alone with my ugly green wall color. I think I might also adopt a cat as my ex was really allergic. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA. Dude basically said he hates you and everything about you. What are you supposed to do, beg for his love when you can find someone who'll give it to you readily? Nah. Sorry this happened and that you were blindsided, but this will be a good thing in the long run. On to the next. FYIW. He sounds jealous, insecure and emotionally stunted. If what you've written is how things played out, then you dodged a huge bullet. Ope. He was basically doing his own renditions of 10 things I hate about you. I don't know. I mean, he wants to break up with me. Why would I plead? It is done to a deleted comment. I was really confused trying to take everything in. He talked really fast and a lot. So I did not know what else to say. Also because everything I do is wrong. I think he would have been even more annoyed if I started to cry or something. Ghost him now. I can't ghost him. We have to talk about the lease, about our wedding savings account and a few other things. To another commenter. Yes, that is easy said. But I have to wait to get a response from the landlord, we have to inform the bank etc. etc. So until I don't have confirmation that I am in the clear, I am keeping him unblocked. I have him muted. The all commenter. Sounds like his ego couldn't handle you being the breadwinner. Not your problem, he could have communicated like an adult rather than seething in his own insecurities. He sounds emotionally weak. Oop. Which is so dumb? He is a doctor in economy and past pursuing becoming a professor. Commenter. Dude basically hates himself for decisions he took without ever consulting you. He chose his comforts, but now since others seem in a better position, he is venting on you and making you the culprit. NTA. But your man has a little brain and doesn't know what to do with it. Oop. I would have supported him if he wanted to move away. IDK if we would have stayed together because LDRs are hard, but I would have been 100% supportive. Maybe he resented you for being successful while he wasn't. But that is the thing. He was successful. He has even published a few papers in important magazines and is on the way to become a junior professor. He is objectively really successful. This is all just so weird. Commenter. Girl, I've been with a man like that. They want drama. They want toxicity. They will fuck up your life out of pure insecurity and hate. You dodged a massive bullet. I'm sorry this happened, you deserve better. Wish you the best OOP. Then I hope he meets the telenovela star of his dreams. I prefer my boring happy life. Commenter. What country are you in? Here in the US, the average person would have accumulated debt if they made it that far in their education. Germany update. Post. To start, Alex moved out pretty quickly after the breakup. He has been staying with a friend, and we sorted out everything like mail, subscriptions, and the lease. I'm also in the process of adopting a cat. Her name is Luna, but I have been thinking about changing it since my family already has 2 pets named Luna, a Moon, and Kamar. She is still at her foster home for now, but I have visited her a few times, and I already adore her. She is a scrappy little tabby who follows her foster mom around like a shadow, and I can't wait for her to move in during the first week of December. I've already gotten her bowls, toys, and a bed by the window ready. Now on to what happened. Last week, I was out showing someone around the city. He is the son of my parents' friends who recently moved here for work. My parents asked me to help him get familiar with the area, so I agreed. It was nothing special, just walking around, grabbing coffee, and pointing out useful spots in the city. Apparently, Alex saw us. I didn't even realize he was there, but later that night, I started getting texts from an unknown number. I guess he got a new number since I blocked his old one. The texts were just weird. He accused me of flaunting my new relationship in public, said I must have been seeing this guy before we broke up, and told me that everything he suspected about me was true. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to entertain his paranoia. The messages kept coming though. They went from angry to desperate, with him saying things like, "At least admit you were lying to me," and, "Was anything about us even real?" It was exhausting and honestly a little scary to see how quickly he spiraled. For the record, this guy isn't my boyfriend. He's not even someone I'm interested in. He's just the son of family friends who needed help settling into the city. The whole thing was completely innocent, but Alex has twisted it into some kind of betrayal in his head. What gets me is how little Alex seems to know me. I'm not the type of person to jump into a relationship so soon after everything that happened. Even if I were, it wouldn't be any of his business. We are done. I've made that clear. After I didn't respond to his texts, Alex started calling. I didn't pick up, but the voicemails were a mix of angry rants and desperate pleas. I ended up blocking his new number too. It feels ridiculous that I have to keep doing this, but I guess this is where we are now. Then this weekend, I went out to a bar with my friends. A few hours in, guess who walked in? Alex. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if he followed me there, but as soon as he spotted me, he came straight over. He was clearly upset, asking to talk, and I told him no. My friend stepped in, and thankfully, he left without causing a scene, but it ruined my night. It felt like I couldn't escape him, no matter where I went or what I did. When I got home later that night, I was completely drained. I had just started to relax when I heard a knock on my door. It was Alex, standing there in tears. He started crying, saying he missed me, that he didn't understand why I was doing this to him, and that he didn't know how to move on. It was like all the anger from earlier had been replaced with this desperate sadness. I didn't let him in. I told him he needed to leave, and if he didn't, I would call someone to make him leave. He begged me to listen, but I just closed the door. I spent the rest of the night feeling shaken and honestly a little scared. I don't know what he's going through. I wrote to his best friend about the situation but pleaded to talk to him. He said he would. I'm seriously considering getting a new phone number and possibly even talking to someone about how to handle this legally if it keeps happening. It feels unfair that I have to go to these lengths just to have some peace, but I don't see another option. Update post 2, November 28, 2024, 3 days later. Thanks for the concern and support I've received. I'm fine, really. A lot of people suggested things like getting a restraining order, but I just want to clarify that it's not as simple as walking into an office and asking for one. The process involves proving there's an immediate danger to your safety, providing evidence like texts, calls, or witnesses, and then attending court to get approval. It's not something you can do lightly or without solid proof. And no, I'm obviously not getting a gun. I've also seen people diagnosing Alex with various mental health issues, and I want to ask everyone to stop. Yes, something is clearly wrong, but I'm not a doctor, and neither are most of you. It's not fair or helpful to label him with something like bipolar disorder or anything else without real expertise. For what it's worth, I don't actually feel like I'm in danger. In the past month, these were the only 3 incidents that happened. I don't think he's actively stalking me so much as he just knew my patterns. The bar we were at is my favorite spot, and it was a party of one of my closest friends, so it makes sense that he might have guessed I'd be there. When he showed up at my apartment, he knew what time I usually got home. The city tour is the only thing that might have been more intentional, but it could also have been a coincidence that triggered everything. Anyway, this is the end of it. Yesterday, Alex came over with his mom and one of his friends. At first, I didn't want to let him in, but he promised me that this would be the last time I ever saw him. I agreed, mostly because his mom and friend were there, and I figured it would be more awkward to argue on my doorstep. When we sat down, Alex admitted that he was going through a crisis. He told me he was mad at me, but he didn't know why. He said he doesn't like me, that I annoy him, but that he weirdly still loves me, which is why he went crazy when he saw me with someone else. He assured me there wasn't anyone else on his end either. He said he felt like he was going insane. He talked about how he feels judged for being older and not being able to give me the life he thinks I deserve. He said he hates his colleagues, hates his job, hates everything right now, and that everyone and everything annoys him. He told me he feels old and like he should want kids at this point in his life, but he doesn't, and that thought terrifies him. He said he just wants to be alone and not talk to anyone for a while. I didn't say much. I mostly just nodded because I didn't know what to say. After he was done, he told me he was leaving. He's on some kind of mental health leave from work, and he said he's leaving the country on Sunday. He's going to South America to spend time in nature and find himself. He thanked me for everything and said he was sorry for how he acted. Then he just got up, grabbed the few things he had left at my place, and walked out. His mom was inconsolable. She kept apologizing to me over and over, saying how embarrassed she was by his behavior. I told her it was okay and that she didn't need to apologize to him. She cried a lot, and his friend ended up driving her home after Alex left. I don't really know how I feel about all of this. Part of me is relieved that it's over. Part of me feels sad for him because he clearly doesn't know how to deal with everything he's feeling. Mostly, though, I just feel tired. I'm glad he's taking steps to figure himself out, but it's not my responsibility anymore. Some of OOP's comments on not getting a gun, editor's note. It was more than likely a downvoted troll who asked, but I liked OOP's response. You can't buy guns at an Aldi. It's more dangerous to own a gun when you have no training with it than not owning one. Commenter. He's a little young for a midlife crisis, but certainly, the man is having issues with his life choices, and it's tearing him apart. Your empathy is warranted, but in the end, those troubles are his, not yours. Hopefully, this is the last you'll hear of him. Good luck to you. OOP. It's just a life crisis then, I guess. Who knows? Update, same post. December 3, 2024, 5 days later, about 6 weeks from OG post. Edit December 3rd. He is definitely gone. My friend sent me some of his Insta stories of him at the airport and then about a day later in Bogota. So, yep, he is gone. I am safe, and on Friday, I get to pick up Helios Maximus first, lol, Heli for short. Sil endured 2 assaults, leaving a letter that led my brother to disown his daughter. I raised her, but now he demands her house. To begin with, my sister-in-law Zara was a very kind and generous person. She always greeted me with love and made me feel like I was a sister from the first time I met her. We had grown really close over the years because we were both working women, and we would spend our weekends shopping or going to lunch together. Zara was always incredibly fit and took excellent care of her health. This is why the sad news of her breast cancer diagnosis shocked us all so deeply. We united behind her and supported her fight against cancer. I made it a point to visit her frequently during her chemotherapy rounds to spend time with her and watch over my infant niece whenever possible. During one of my visits to her home, while we sat together in her living room, she told me some news that broke my heart. Her voice trembled as she stated that her physicians had delivered a devastating diagnosis. Her cancer was severe and resistant to therapy. They'd given her a prognosis that left little room for optimism. The weight of her comments weighed heavily in the air, and I fought to find the perfect words to console her during that vulnerable moment. I asked her what I could do to make everything easy for her. Her eyes, which were typically filled with love and joy, suddenly showed a mixture of fear and resignation. She thanked me for everything I had done for her and expressed her desire not to burden me with a secret she had kept concealed from everyone. I strongly stated that she had nothing to apologize for and that I would do anything for her, no questions asked. She then entrusted me with a secret she had never told anyone, including her own parents. She told me that years ago, during her undergraduate days, she went through a horrible experience that has haunted her ever since. She was the victim of a sexual attack at a party, where she had been drinking too much. The attacker wore a mask, making it impossible for her to recognize him. The horror of that night left severe scars that she had been carrying silently for years. As she described the events of that fatal evening, I listened in terror. She was then in a relationship with my brother. Naturally, she looked to him for help and consolation, expecting that he would be the one person in the world who understood her. Instead of finding relief in his embrace, she was confronted with astonishment and accusations. My brother couldn't understand how another man could violate her in this way. In disbelief, he began to question her actions, indicating that perhaps her clothes or demeanor toward the guy at the party had prompted the assault. He refused to think that a man could accomplish such a thing unless the lady gave him a signal. Zara was heartbroken that he was questioning her in this manner. The weight of shame and guilt, wrongfully imposed on her by someone she loved, exacerbated her pain. Despite this, she summoned the bravery to denounce the assault to the police and even underwent a medical examination, which confirmed her claim about the assault. She wanted the culprit punished. Unfortunately for Zara, she lived in a college neighborhood where parties were prevalent and thousands of students congregated under the cover of night. Despite their best efforts, the authorities were unable to identify the masked assailant. It didn't help that none of the guests at the party came forward to testify for her. As a result, the inquiry stalled, and Zara never received justice. At the time, her parents were still living and the only ones who believed in her. This is how she overcame her great humiliation for what had occurred to her. According to Zara, after months of discussing the incident with my brother, he finally came around and apologized for his initial reaction. He realized that he should have known better and pledged to be more supportive of her going forward. Despite the strain on their relationship, Zara did not want to break it with him, so she chose to forgive him. Despite my brother's best efforts to be there for her in the years that followed, the tragedy never left her mind. I was saddened to hear this, especially since my brother had never mentioned any of it to me. Sil pointed out that my brother disliked discussing it and had even told her to keep the occurrence a secret, as if it were something disgusting for others to discover. I gently gripped Sil's hand and assured her that I didn't blame her for anything that had happened to her because it was never her fault. Sil smiled back bitterly and told me she had more to say. She talked slowly, as if each word was both a confession and a request for understanding. She then disclosed that she had been sexually attacked again after the initial event, this time by her former employer from her prior position. I remembered how, 2 or 3 years ago, she unexpectedly left her work, despite the fact that she had always enjoyed it. Sil had never told me why until now. Her hands trembled as she described how terrified and helpless she felt during the second assault. She informed me she was numb from shock during the event and could only move after the assault finished. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she departed the scene in a daze, her entire body trembling with the weight of what had just occurred. She recounted feeling detached from everything, as if she were witnessing the trauma from outside her own body. Later, as she sat in her car crying, her first thoughts drifted to my brother. She knew based on his earlier reaction that he would likely blame her again. She described how she felt the same shame when she realized she had been abused by another man without her consent. She felt unclean and repulsed by herself. This time, the trauma had a greater impact on her mental health since, unlike previously, she had no one to talk to. Her parents had died, and she was afraid to open out to my brother. As a result, she fell into melancholy and experienced a few panic attacks. Sil told me she debated whether to report the assault to the police and have her boss arrested, or to safeguard her marriage. Then, 3 weeks later, she learned she was pregnant. At that point, she was positive that the child was not my brother's. The weight of this realization devastated her even more, and she was unsure how to convey the news to my brother. She assumed he would ask for a divorce. As her mental health deteriorated, Sil decided to end her life. She told me how powerless she felt at the time, lacking the strength to end the pregnancy and not wanting others to know about the assaults. I listened to her story, holding back tears, unable to understand what she had been through silently, without any of us knowing. Sil went on to tell me how, the evening she decided to end her life with sleeping pills, everything changed. My brother unexpectedly discovered the positive pregnancy test in the restroom. Instead of waiting for an explanation, he began bouncing up and down, overjoyed that she was pregnant and that they could finally start a family together. Caught up in his joy and engulfed in his embrace, she found herself unable to bring him down with the truth. Later, she told me how humiliated she was for not having the strength to tell him the truth that day or over the course of the previous 2 years, that the child was not his. Sil informed me that every time she saw the delicate moments between her daughter and my brother, her heart broke again. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she apologized to me for lying to my brother and everyone else. She even referred to herself as a coward and a loser who did not deserve a family as great as ours. She believed that cancer was God's punishment for her falsehoods. She informed me she intended to disclose everything to my brother before she died. However, she asked me to make her a pledge. It turns out she wanted me to look after her daughter while she was gone. She pleaded with me with her hands since she had no family members left, both her parents and grandparents had passed away. If my brother refused to accept the child after learning the truth, I was her only hope of caring for her daughter. I was quite shaken after hearing everything and needed some time to comprehend it all. As a woman myself, I felt profound sympathy for everything she had been through. I knew she was telling me the whole truth because she was dying and needed to get it off her chest. Of course, I realized that she had lied to my brother for so long about being the baby's father, but she was also visibly sorry. At this moment, all I could do was reassure her that if necessary, I would raise my niece on my own. She exhaled a sigh of relief as I fulfilled my promise to her. I continued to see Sil over the weeks as her illness advanced, holding out hope for her survival even as the reality of her condition became more apparent. She remained as courageous as possible throughout. Finally, she went away peacefully in her sleep. Her absence has created a void, yet her spirit continues to motivate me to live with compassion and gratitude. She showed me that even in the worst times, there can be grace and beauty if we have the strength to perceive it. She was more than just a sister-in-law to me. She was a friend and sincere confidant. After she died, my brother shared with me the contents of a letter written by my sister-in-law, which revealed the awful reality she had previously confided in me. He was heartbroken to realize that the child he had embraced with such delight was not biologically his. His anguish and rage were obvious as he dealt with this new reality, which was exacerbated by the recent death of his wife. In his grief, he couldn't bring himself to hold the infant anymore. Instead, he told our parents and me that he was going to give her up. I firmly told him that Sil had asked me to look after my niece, and that I wanted to take care of her even if he no longer wanted her. This is how I welcomed my niece into my home without hesitation. I was really heartbroken for her because she had just lost her mother, and with no other family left, her parents and grandparents had passed away. I knew she needed a stable and supportive atmosphere at the moment. Later, when we gathered for the reading of my sister-in-law's will, everyone was already emotional because they knew my niece did not belong to my brother. Many of my family members were divided over this news. However, Sil was no longer with us to face their fury. According to her will, she made specific and careful plans for her daughter's future, leaving every asset and resource she had amassed over the years for her daughter's benefit. Sil had a large fortune from both her parents and grandparents, so she had a lot of money to leave behind. To my brother's sorrow, nothing was allocated to him, exacerbating his pain and sense of betrayal. He yelled loudly that it was wrong of her not to leave anything in her will for him. Sil had specifically stated that she had committed the management of these monies to me provided I was willing to take on the responsibility of caring for her kid. This news surprised both me and everyone else present. I suppose this is why Sil wanted me to make that pledge to her weeks before she died, so she could update her will accordingly. She was correct to believe her intuition and not allow my brother access to her assets, since if that had been the case, he would never have let my niece have anything and would have abandoned her without money. My brother was unwilling to continue caring for the child, therefore I was eventually granted full custody of my niece. I've been able to care for her all these years because of the financial support I received. My brother attempted to battle me over the money Sil had left behind, believing he was entitled to at least half of it. However, the judge did not listen to him. In rage, my brother told me that he didn't want anything to do with Sil's daughter and that he never wanted to see my face again, saying that I had betrayed him by taking in the girl. I firmly told him that I was sorry for all of his sorrow, but I was not going to break my promise to Sil. My sister-in-law's decision to keep the facts from my brother was wrong, and I acknowledged that. However, now that she is no longer with us, I am convinced that the child is not to blame for her parents' conduct. This is why I've always focused only on establishing a caring and secure home for my niece, sheltering her from the intricacies of the past. Over the years, I've used the funds Sil left behind to ensure that my niece has everything she needs. I've also purchased a home for her, which my niece will entirely inherit once she reaches adulthood. I've made every effort to send her to great schools and care for her as if she were my own daughter. I am not married and have dedicated my entire life to raising my niece. Despite my best attempts, my niece, understandably, has concerns about her parents, especially her father. She misses my brother, but she understands that relationships cannot be forced in these circumstances. My decision to prioritize my niece's well-being has affected my ties with my other family members. They have all chosen to cut ties with me and no longer invite me to family gatherings, claiming that my actions are foolish and that I have prioritized my niece over my own. Even my parents believe I should have given up my niece and have often expressed their disappointment that I am raising someone else's child. As you might expect, the past several years have been a challenging journey in which I've had to negotiate the chasm between what I believe is right and the ramifications of those decisions on my family connections. This year, as my niece approaches her 18th birthday, I feel a sense of accomplishment as I prepare to transfer all of her assets, including the property I've acquired for her per Sil's desires. It's a significant achievement for which I've worked hard. I feel like I've done everything I could to protect her up until now, and she's ready to make her own decisions. My brother contacted me unexpectedly last week, saying he needed to discuss something very serious. My heart skipped a beat. I hoped he'd realized his mistake and wanted to reconnect with me and my niece after all these years. I agreed to meet with him, but I didn't want my niece to find out and get her hopes up until I knew why he was visiting. So I planned for us to meet when she was at school. When my brother came, there was a sense of expectation and warmth as we made small chat. He told me he has since remarried, and I was pleasantly surprised to learn that he now has 2 children of his own. He showed me images of them, and his boys looked exactly like him. I was disappointed that he hadn't invited me to his wedding, but I understood that he did what he had to do after Sil had deceived him. During our talk, I couldn't help but feel proud as I highlighted my niece's accomplishments and improvement over the years. I informed my brother that she occasionally inquired about him and was fairly mature for her age, thinking he would say he wanted to see her. Despite my excitement to communicate these wonderful tidings, he appeared indifferent to my niece. He interrupted me, his tone immediately changing to one of seriousness. He explained that he had come to meet me not to discuss my niece, but to request ownership of her house. I stared at him wide-eyed as he told how his family had suddenly lost their home and that our parents had already loaned him a large sum of money over the years, so he could no longer ask for assistance. Since he knew I had purchased the house with Sil's money, he believed it was only fair for me and my niece to let him keep the house to accommodate his large family while we relocated to a smaller space. I questioned him why he thought he could even pose such a question. My brother went on to defend it by claiming that he had previously done a lot for Sil, but she had turned out to be nothing more than a leech. I knew this wasn't true because Sil had always worked and paid her portion of the bills, including throughout her chemotherapy treatments. She covered her own medical expenses and had health insurance. I brought this out to my brother, telling him that it was ridiculous for him to expect a house when he hadn't even bothered raising my niece after Sil died. This simply made him angrier. He told me that, as his sister, I should stop holding a candle for a deceased woman and instead assist him and his family in securing the house before my niece turned 18. He persuaded me to view things his way, saying that the house was his legitimate possession. The weight of his words hung in the air as I considered his request. I couldn't help but consider the ramifications of such a decision. The property was more than simply a physical asset. It symbolized security and stability, which had been meticulously planned for my niece's future. To give it up, no matter how badly my brother needed it, would mean breaking commitments and risking the stability I had fought so hard to establish. My niece's well-being and future were paramount, and any decision involving her assets had to be made with her best interests in mind, no matter how difficult or emotional the situation. In that moment, I grasped the gravity of the situation and the need to stick to my beliefs. I informed him unequivocally that I could not support his request and that he should take responsibility for his own family rather than relying on his deceased wife's possessions. I continued to tell him how ashamed I was that he even considered this option, and how he had given up all rights when he handed over custody of his daughter to me following Syl's death. My brother's face flushed red with rage at my statement, but I continued before he could interject again. I voiced my disappointment that he had not been present for my niece during all of these years. I didn't hesitate to remind him that, while I realized Syl had betrayed him, he should also see that she had been the victim of countless traumas. It was unjust of him to put the blame onto her now, especially because he had not supported her after her first sexual assault. When I revealed the assault, his eyes widened in amazement, and he demanded to know how I knew about it. As no one else knew the truth. This is when I told him that Syl had confided in me and entrusted me with the task of caring for my niece before she died. When my brother heard this, he became accusatory, alleging I had surprised him and labeling me a liar, just like Syl. I shook my head, reminding him that Syl was terminally ill and had already endured enough. After all the years of him not taking responsibility for my niece while I had done everything I could to assist her, he had no right to bring up the past and complain now simply because he wanted Syl's money. I was weary of him constantly behaving like a victim. It was disheartening to see him shift blame and claim entitlement when he had not been financially supportive of my niece for years. His boldness in coming 16 years later and requesting ownership of her house felt like a slap in the face, ignoring all of my sacrifices and attempts to assure my niece's well-being and future security. My brother was unhappy because I refused to give in to his demands. Since our meeting, he and my parents have called me often, accusing me of being difficult for no reason and insisting that I have family devotion to them rather than my niece. It's demoralizing and terrifying to discover that when it comes to money, even your own blood relatives can devolve into something unknown. I continue to stand up for my niece and refuse to give in to my brother's unreasonable demands. Update 1. First and foremost, I am astounded by how kind everyone has been in my DMs and comments. Thank you for making me grin. Second, I can't tell you how many women have contacted me, giving their own stories and saying how closely they connect to what Syl went through. I wish I could give every one of you a great, tight embrace and relieve your anguish. Sexual assault is one of the most horrible things that can happen to a woman, and I wish someone could have helped Syl at the time. She wasn't a bad person, and she didn't deserve what she went through. It's unfortunate that I have to defend her, but just because you haven't suffered sexual assault doesn't imply others don't. Syl had demonstrated amazing courage following the first assault, but the second occurrence left her shaken, rightly so. She was immobilized in fear, as many sexual assault victims are. I wish she had felt comfortable enough to open up to me sooner, because I would have been there for her in every way. Knowing what she went through crushes my heart, and I wish I could have been there for her during those difficult days. To those who label Syl a cheater and question her narrative, I really pray you never go through such anguish only to have your truth challenged. If Syl had really had an affair, she may have instructed me to contact the man for custody after she died. Furthermore, if there had been an affair, the man would not have remained silent all these years. He would have most certainly come up, especially given how much money Syl left behind for her kid. If she had an affair, I'm sure she would have wanted her daughter to know her biological father. Syl did everything possible to safeguard her daughter. Update 2. I sat down with my niece and told her that my brother had lately been to speak with me, and his main goal was to gain control of the house. I advised her to be cautious if he ever approached her. As I talked, I could see the rage and pain in her eyes. She had hoped for years that her father would reach out to her because he actually cared. However, when she discovered that his contact was motivated by his own wants, she felt deceived. I can't believe him, she informed me, her voice shaking from emotion. After all this time, he only reached out when he needed something. She informed me that she did not want anything to do with him and expressed her gratitude that her mother had not left him anything. She then hugged me and expressed her gratitude for everything I'd done for her over the years. Her statements were simultaneously painful and empowering to hear. It brought tears to my eyes as I understood that despite the sorrow of her father's acts, she was strong and determined to carry on without him. Update 3. After speaking with my niece, I decided to send a lengthy email to my parents and brother to document everything and state my position clearly. In the email, I described our previous interactions and highlighted that they had no right to ask me to hand over my niece's home to my brother. I stressed that this request constituted financial fraud and stated unequivocally that I would take legal action if my brother attempted to see me or my niece again to request the house for his family. I informed my brother that by choosing not to care for his kid, he surrendered all rights. I also discussed the numerous difficulties and frustrations I had encountered while raising my niece on my own, with no prior experience. I highlighted the emotional, financial, and logistical hurdles I had faced in providing her with a secure and caring home. I also informed him that he had never paid child support or checked in on his daughter in all these years. I pointed out that he and my parents should feel nothing but guilt for attempting to take something that did not belong to them. I insisted that they had no right to suddenly intervene and make demands after all this time, especially because they had contributed nothing to her upbringing or well-being. The email was detailed and sincere, reflecting the sacrifices I had made for my niece. I reaffirmed my resolve to protect her and honor Syl's wishes no matter what. My message was clear and unequivocal. They had forfeited their right to be a part of her life due to their negligence and lack of support, and they had no place in her future. I never received a response after submitting the email. However, my brother and parents have not contacted me again, which is satisfactory for me. The silence speaks volumes, and I'm happy to have some peace knowing they won't meddle with my niece's life anymore. My niece is now preparing for her prom and impending birthday celebration. Watching her manage these thrilling occasions makes me very proud. I am so proud of the woman she has become, and I can't wait to support her at every big milestone in her future. It makes me emotional just thinking about how much she has grown and how much she resembles Syl, especially in her lips and brows. Every day I see Syl's strength and tenacity in my niece, and I only hope that she will be as strong as her mother, no matter what she does. My sister-in-law faked car accident injuries to manipulate my husband, but I caught her on camera. Now she's in jail for fraud. I never expected to be spilling my heart out on Reddit, yet here I am, desperate for advice and support. I'm Nancy, 28F, and I'm currently dealing with my husband's family, notably his sister Jenny, 32F. Jenny and I have always had a rocky relationship, but recent events have pushed things to breaking point. To provide some context, I met my husband Warren, 30M, at a mutual friend's Halloween party 5 years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was dressed as Wonder Woman, and he arrived as Clark Kent. We spent the entire night conversing in a secluded nook, ignoring the craziness of the party around us. We hit it off right away, bonding over our mutual love of hiking, photography and 1980s movies. I had never felt such an instant connection with anyone before. We chose to marry after 2 years of dating, which included weekend escapades, nice movie nights, and the occasional disagreement, typically about Warren's habit of leaving his socks everywhere. Our wedding was a small, personal celebration in a rustic barn, attended by close friends and family. That was when I first met Jenny. Jenny made it apparent from the moment we met that she did not like me. She arrived late for the rehearsal dinner in a white outfit that looked strangely bridal. During her toast, she spent more time reminiscing about her childhood memories with Warren than wishing us success in our marriage. She even accidentally poured red wine over my outfit during the reception. At the time, I put it down to wedding day stress and attempted to dismiss it. Jenny's behavior intensified over the months. She would make disparaging remarks about my work as a freelance graphic designer, hinting that I was not talented enough for her brother. "Oh, you're still doing that little drawing thing?" she'd ask with a condescending smile. "I thought you'd have found a real job by now." Each comment seemed like a small knife, eroding away at my self-esteem. Warren is from a close-knit family, and he has always been protective of Jenny. Jenny's parents died in a vehicle accident when she was 18, leaving her to raise Warren alone. She put her goal of becoming a nurse on hold in order to support her family with 2 jobs. I understand and admire their bond, but Jenny uses it to control Warren and disrupt our relationship. The first serious incident happened on our first wedding anniversary. Warren and I had planned a weekend retreat to a quiet mountain chalet, where we had spent our first trip together. I had been looking forward to it for months, planned hikes, picnics, and even a surprise candlelight dinner beneath the stars. Jenny called Warren in tears 2 days before we were about to depart, saying she was going through a difficult breakup and needed her brother's support. Warren, being the compassionate guy he is, proposed that we postpone our trip to be present for Jenny. I was disappointed, but I understood the circumstances. After all, family comes first, right? However, when we got to Jenny's house, we discovered her laughing and drinking wine with her friends. There were no signs of a split or sorrow. When I asked her about it later, she dismissed it, claiming she was simply feeling low and needed some companionship. "You wouldn't understand, Nancy," she murmured patronizingly, patting my arm. Warren and I share a special bond. Sometimes I just want my lil brother around. Warren saw nothing wrong with it, but I couldn't resist the suspicion that Jenny had purposefully thwarted our intentions. Jenny's intrusion into our life increased in frequency and severity over time. She would pop up unexpectedly to our place, usually on date nights or when Warren and I had scheduled some quality time together. She once interrupted a romantic supper that I had spent hours preparing. "Oh, did I interrupt something?" she inquired innocently, before settling into our couch and putting on the television. She would phone Warren at weird hours, claiming to have various emergencies that always seemed to be resolved by the time we arrived. One night, at 2 a.m., she called to report a gas leak in her apartment. We rushed over, only to find her quietly watching a movie, saying the scent had vanished just before we arrived. The problem came to a climax last month at Warren's 30th birthday celebration. I had spent weeks preparing a surprise party for all of Warren's friends and colleagues. I even managed to fly in his best friend from college, Mike, whom he hadn't seen in years due to their locations on separate coasts. The celebration was in full swing, with everyone enjoying the catered cuisine, open bar, and the presentation of Warren's life that I had painstakingly created. Jenny arrived an hour late, crashing into the living room while evidently intoxicated. She was holding a large gift box covered in glittering gold paper, and she proudly stated that she had the nicest present for her newborn brother. The room went silent as she demanded everyone's attention. The box contained a set of keys. Jenny proudly announced that she had purchased Warren a classic car he had long desired, a 1967 Chevrolet Impala, the very kind his father used to drive. I felt my heart fall. My own gift, a homemade picture album recording our relationship and a weekend vacation to his favorite camping spot, fell short in contrast. The room fell silent as all eyes went to Warren. I could see the conflict on his face. He was definitely moved by the gesture, but he was also concerned by the gift's extravagant nature. "Jen," he continued quietly. "This is too much. How did you afford this?" But what occurred next really stunned me. Jenny looked at me triumphantly and said, "See, this is how you show love, not with some cheap crafts and a trip to the woods." Her words struck deep, and I felt embarrassed in front of all of our guests. The room became uncomfortably quiet, and our friends shifted nervously, unsure where to look. Warren eventually spoke up, his voice strained with rage. "Jenny, that is enough. Your actions are improper and you should go." Jenny's face was distorted with wrath. She threw the keys at Warren's chest before stumbling towards me, pointing an accusatory finger. "You," she muttered, "have turned him against me. You are ruining our family." She stormed out, knocking over a vase of flowers and slammed the door so hard that a picture fell from the wall. The gathering soon dispersed after that, with guests making embarrassing excuses to go early. I was left standing in our living room, surrounded by half-finished food and deflated balloons, feeling completely dejected. Warren and I had a long, emotional chat late into the night after everyone else had left. He apologized for not standing up to Jenny sooner and pledged to establish clearer limits with her. We agreed that Jenny's behavior was harmful and that we needed to minimize our interactions with her for the sake of our marriage. But as I looked into Warren's eyes, I could sense the sorrow and turmoil. How could I ask him to choose between his wife and his sister, who had given so much for him? The next day, Warren called Jenny to discuss what had transpired. He informed her that her acts were inappropriate and that she needed to apologize to me if she wanted to remain a part of our life. Jenny refused, claiming she had done nothing wrong and that I was causing difficulties in their family. "I'm the only real family you have left, Warren," she added, her voice full with sorrow. "Don't let her take that away from you. We've reached an impasse. Warren is caught between his feelings for me and his commitment to his sister. I don't want to force him to make a decision, but I can't keep living with the continual stress and drama. I'm thinking about suggesting that we move to a different city to get some distance, but I'm concerned about Warren's reaction. Will he consider it an ultimatum? Will this merely bring him closer to Jenny? I adore my husband and want to make our marriage work, but I'm beginning to worry if it's feasible with Jenny's frequent intervention. Am I overreacting? Should I work harder to reconcile with Jenny for Warren's sake, or should I take more drastic measures to protect our relationship? Any advice is much appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of family drama, and I'm not sure how to get back to shore. Update. It has been almost a month since my original post, and I wanted to provide an update on Jenny's situation. A lot has happened, and I'm still trying to digest it all. Thank you to everyone who gave me advice and support. It helped me get through this difficult period. Following my previous essay, Warren and I discussed Jenny's behavior and its influence on our marriage numerous times more. We decided to take a break from Jenny for a while to focus on our relationship. Warren committed to minimize his contact with her and to always communicate with me before making any plans that involved his sister. It was not an easy decision for him, and I could feel the guilt weighing on him, but he saw that it was vital for our marriage. For the first few weeks, everything was peaceful. Jenny seemed to respect our boundaries, and Warren and I were spending some much-needed quality time together. We resumed regular date evenings, which we hadn't done in months due to Jenny's frequent interruptions. We even began organizing a vacation for just the two of us, a hiking trip through multiple national parks, which we had discussed since we first started dating but had never found the time for. For the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic about the future. However, roughly 3 weeks after Warren's birthday party, events took an unexpected turn. It was a quiet Sunday evening, and Warren and I were watching a movie on the couch when his phone called. Mrs. Johnson, Jenny's neighbor, was identified on the caller ID. Warren replied, his brow pinched with anxiety. Warren's face lost color as I watched, and he jumped up abruptly, nearly knocking over his glass of wine. "We'll be right there," he stated, his voice cracking. He turned to me, his eyes wide with horror. "Jenny has been in a vehicle accident. She is at St. Mary's Hospital." The drive to the hospital was tense. Warren held the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white while I attempted to obtain additional information from Mrs. Johnson over the phone. Jenny was driving home from a bar when she lost control of her vehicle and smashed into a tree. The police suspected she was driving under the influence. We arrived at the hospital and found Jenny in the emergency department. She was conscious but definitely in pain, with her right arm in a temporary cast and tiny wounds on her face from the smashed windshield. When she spotted Warren, she burst into tears and reached for him with her good arm. "I'm so sorry," she wailed as Warren gently embraced her. I botched up so badly." I stood awkwardly to the side, divided between sorrow for Jenny's situation and annoyance that yet another crisis had interrupted our lives. The doctor informed us that Jenny had been fortunate. Aside from a fractured arm and some cuts and bruises, she had no serious injuries. However, she would require someone to care for her for a few weeks while her arm healed. Warren offered to take care of her before I could even think about what that meant. "She can stay with us," he added, looking at me pleadingly. "Just till she gets back on her feet. We cannot leave her alone like this." I wanted to object and remind him of our commitment to keep boundaries, but how could I say no in this situation? I reluctantly nodded in agreement. Jenny moved in with us the next day, and it's been a nightmare ever since. She continuously demands Warren's attention, phoning him for everything. "Warren, can you help me with my pillows? Warren, I need a glass of water. Warren, can you change the channel for me?" It's as if she's returned to a defenseless child, and Warren is only too willing to play the role of protecting Big Brother. She complains about everything. "Nancy, the stuff you cook is too spicy. Don't you realize I have a delicate stomach? The way you've set up the guest room, the sun comes in too bright in the morning. Can't you get some better curtains?" And just about anything else she can think of. I try to be patient, reminding myself that she is injured and likely in pain, but it is wearing me down. The worst part is that I am beginning to suspect Jenny isn't as helpless as she claims to be. I've noticed her using her damaged arm normally when she thinks no one is looking, like reaching for the TV remote or adjusting her hair. But the moment Warren enters the room, she returns to wincing and gripping her arm as if it were made of glass. When I conveyed this to Warren, he accused me of being neurotic and uncaring. "She's hurt, Nancy," he replied, his voice tight and frustrated. "Why can't you just be supportive?" I felt crazy. Was I truly being unreasonable, or was Jenny manipulating us both? Things escalated last night when I overheard Jenny on the phone with a buddy. I hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but as I walked past the guest room to do laundry, I heard Jenny's voice, which was especially energetic and enthusiastic. Curiosity got the best of me, so I stopped outside the door to listen. "Girl, you wouldn't believe how well this is working out," Jenny said, laughing. "I have Warren waiting for me hand and foot. He's so concerned about me that it's almost too simple." She paused to listen to her friend's response. "The arm? Oh, it scarcely hurts anymore, but they don't need to know, do they? I believe I can stretch this out for at least another month. Maybe by then I'll be able to convince Warren that he's far better off with his real family." I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. All of my concerns were confirmed in the worst conceivable way. Jenny wasn't simply taking advantage of the circumstance. She was deliberately attempting to build a wedge between Warren and myself. I am at a loss on what to do. I tried to tell Warren what I heard, but he didn't believe me. He thinks I'm just trying to get rid of Jenny, and that my animosity for her is clouding my judgment. "Why would she lie about being hurt?" he said, his voice filled with mistrust. That doesn't make any sense, Nancy. I feel insane in my own home, watching this lady influence my husband and destroy our marriage. The vacation we had planned seems like a distant memory now. Instead of wandering through gorgeous scenery, I'm stuck in a house with a lady who appears determined to destroy my life. I'm thinking about taking a few days off to clear my mind, possibly staying with my friend Lisa, but I'm concerned about leaving Warren alone with Jenny and her influence. What if I return to discover she has entirely turned him against me? I love my spouse, but I'm beginning to question if our marriage will survive this. How can we move forward if he does not believe me? How do I compete with the bond he has with Jenny? Any advice is much appreciated. I feel like I've reached the end of my rope and have no idea what to do next. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my previous report and Jenny's situation has taken an unexpected turn. I'd like to thank everyone who gave advice and support. It really helped me get through this difficult period. After my last update, I was at my wit's end. I couldn't continue to watch Jenny damage my marriage. Taking several commenters' advice, I decided to collect actual evidence of Jenny's deceit. I know many of you recommended against it, citing privacy concerns, but I felt I had no choice. I installed a covert camera in the living room. I told myself it was only for a few days, just to show to Warren that I wasn't hallucinating. Within 2 days, I had convincing evidence that Jenny used her wounded arm regularly when Warren was not around. I caught her lifting heavy books, fixing her hair, and even opening a tight jar lid with the arm she said was too painful to use. The true shock came when I recorded a chat between Jenny and one of her friends who had come to visit. Jenny blatantly criticized me, calling me gullible and boasting about how simple it was to deceive Warren. He's always been a sucker for the damsel in distress act, she told me. A few crocodile tears and he's putty in my hands. I felt horrible listening to it, but I knew I'd found the proof I needed. With shaking hands, I transferred the tape to a USB drive and waited for Warren to return home from work. When Warren came, I sat down and told him what I'd done. He was outraged at first, accusing me of invading Jenny's privacy, but I begged him to simply view the films. His face turned pale as he saw a film of Jenny using her arm normally and heard her taunting words. "I can't believe this," he said quietly, his voice scratchy. "Why would she do this?" I had no response for him, but I felt a flood of relief wash over me. Warren could now see the truth. Warren confronted Jenny in the evening. The subsequent argument was fierce and difficult to watch. Jenny first denied everything and accused me of doctoring the footage. But when confronted with overwhelming facts, she broke down. Jenny acknowledged, through tears, misrepresenting her injuries and attempting to separate us. She discussed feeling abandoned when Warren married and her dread of losing the only family she had left. Jenny had never shown me this side of herself before, vulnerable, terrified, and extremely insecure. Warren, split between rage and concern for his sister, urged Jenny to leave our home immediately. She begged him to let her stay, pledging to reform, but Warren stood firm. "You need help, Jenny," he continued, his tone stern but not harsh. "Professional assistance, and until you respect our marriage, you are not welcome here." Jenny left that night, amidst tears and recriminations. The house felt strangely quiet after she left. Warren and I sat in silence for a long time, absorbing the day's events. Warren finally turned to me and apologized. "I'm so sorry, Nancy," he replied, his eyes overflowing with regret. "I should have believed you. I should have seen what was happening." We talked late into the night about trust, family, and the future of our marriage. Things remained tense for a few weeks, but they gradually improved. Warren went to therapy to sort out his confusing feelings about his relationship with Jenny. We also began couples counseling to repair the trust that had been broken and enhance our marriage. Then, approximately a month ago, we got unexpected news. Jenny had been arrested for fraud. Apparently, she was running a small-scale Ponzi scheme, defrauding friends and acquaintances of their cash. The classic automobile she had given Warren for his birthday. Warren was heartbroken after purchasing the item with stolen money. He felt bad for not recognizing the warning flags earlier and for maybe enabling Jenny's actions over time. I did my best to encourage him during this difficult period, reminding him that Jenny's actions were entirely her responsibility. We've now discovered that Jenny's deceptive behavior stretched far beyond our relationship. She had a history of abusing people's trust and sympathy for personal benefit. It was a difficult realization, but it helped Warren recognize that her actions were not his fault. This entire event has put our marriage to the test. There are times when trust difficulties return, when one of us retreats into our own thoughts, but we're working through them together. We've learned to communicate more openly and rely on one another for assistance. We're still processing what's happened, but we're doing it together. Warren has resolved to entirely remove himself from Jenny until she seeks proper help and makes sincere atonement. It's been difficult for him, but he knows it's vital for our well-being. We're focusing on healing and progress. We postponed our vacation and are looking forward to spending uninterrupted time together. There is still a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I am cautiously hopeful about our prospects. Update 3. It has been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some concluding thoughts on this chapter of our lives. Warren and I have made considerable progress in our relationship. Couples counseling has been really beneficial, teaching us improved communication skills and how to support one another during stressful situations. We had to relearn how to trust one another, which wasn't always easy. There have been disagreements, times of uncertainty, and nights spent sleeping in different rooms. However, we've rediscovered the love and connection that brought us together in the first place. Warren has persisted with his individual treatment, working through his complex emotions toward Jenny and his background. He's had to face some difficult truths about his childhood and the relationship between him and his sister. It has been terrible for him, but I can see him becoming stronger and more self-aware with each passing week. Jenny pleaded guilty to the fraud charges and is now serving a 2-year sentence. Warren debated whether or not to attend her trial, but eventually opted against it. He wrote her a letter explaining his decision and expressing his hope that she will utilize this time to ponder and seek the assistance she requires. We haven't had direct touch with Jenny since she went to prison, but we did get a letter from her about a month ago. She apologized for her behavior and the anguish she had caused us. She added that she has been diagnosed with many mental health concerns and is now receiving appropriate therapy. While the letter appears earnest, Warren and I are wary about getting our hopes up. We've agreed that if Jenny displays persistent long-term change following her release, we'll explore gradually restoring our relationship with her. But for now, we're keeping our distance. On a bright side, Warren and I finally went on the vacation we had planned. We spent 2 weeks hiking and camping in national parks, reconnecting with each other and the mutual interests that drew us together in the beginning. There were tensions, old scars emerging in quiet moments around the campfire, but also moments of joy, of rediscovering one another away from the stresses of our daily lives. We've also taken important decisions about our future. We plan to relocate to a new city next year for a fresh start. Warren has been offered an excellent work opportunity, and I'm delighted about the prospects for my freelance business in a new market. We both believe that a change of environment will allow us to put the turmoil of the past behind us and focus on creating our lives together. Looking back, I realize how this difficult experience has ultimately enhanced our marriage. We've learned to stand together in the face of external demands, to instinctively trust each other, and to prioritize our partnership at all times. Warren has developed tremendously, learning to set appropriate boundaries and spot manipulative conduct, even from close ones. Personally, I've learned to trust my instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. I've also discovered the value of patience and understanding, particularly when dealing with complex family dynamics. Although the trip has been arduous, I am grateful for where it has taken us. Warren and I are closer than ever, and we are cautiously optimistic about what the future holds. We know there will always be obstacles, but we are better prepared to confront them together. Thank you to everyone who has followed our story and provided support along the way. Your guidance and encouragement have been helpful. Here is to fresh beginnings and healthier connections.